Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Theruvan Saranai. Good evening, Venerable Mahasangha, Sayales and brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Today we will be talking further on the Maggārammaṇa Tika, object of the path triplet. The three terms of Maggārammaṇa Tika, object of the path triplet. Maggārammaṇā Dhammā states having the path as their object. Maggahetukā Dhammā states having the path as their root cause. And Maggadhipatino Dhammā states having the path as their predominant factor. Now, during the previous two lessons, we spoke about the first two terms, and today we will focus on Maggadhipatino Dhammā. Now, during our last lesson, we spoke about Hetu-Paccaya, so one of the conditions out of the 24 conditions given in the conditional relations, the Patthāna, pakaraṇa. So we need to talk about two more paccaya in order to grasp what is meant by Maggadhipatino Dhammā. So one of those is āyatana paccaya. So before we learn āyatana paccaya, we need to know what āyatana or sense objects are. Now, every single consciousness and the concomitant or the sahajata cetasika mental factors, they can't arise on their own. They can't arise in the absence of a sense object. So they always need an āyatana or a sense object to focus on, to concentrate on, in order for them to arise. So what it's likened to a weak man who requires the support of a walking stick. So if you take away this stick, what's going to happen to the man? He's going to fall down. Similarly, the chitta and cetasika cannot arise in the absence of an āyatana. So what are these āyatana? Basically, everything that exists, do not exist, everything can become an āyatana. So basically, all of the ultimate realities, the 89 consciousness, the chitta, 52 cetasika, mental factors, the 28 rupa, matter, nibbana, can be sense objects. But not only those, even paññatti, concepts, can be an object. So basically, there is nothing that cannot be an āyatana. Everything that you can think of, everything that you can name, everything that exists or even do not exist can become an āyatana for these chitta and cetasika. So here in a table we have given the paccaya dhamma or the conditioning states, and the paccayuppanna dhamma, the conditionally arisen states. So what do they mean? So on the left we have basically the āyatana, and on the right we have the chitta and cetasika. So the 89 chitta and the 52 cetasika we have grouped them as a common entity. What do they take as āyatana? They basically take 89 chitta, 52 cetasika, 28 rupa. And these can be either atita, past, pachuppanna, present, or anagata, future dhammas. And then when it comes to nibbana and paññatti concepts, these are timeless. They are kala vimutta, which the reason we call them kala vimutta because there is no arising or passing away of these dhammas. Nibbana and paññatti do not arise, and they do not pass away. So we call them kala vimutta or timeless. Now we come to the next paccaya, adhipati paccaya, predominance condition. So what it means in a nutshell is that it's like a king that rules over his subjects. So you have the king and he commands or he rules over the subjects that who are under him. So this adhipati paccaya or predominance condition are twofold. The first is called Ārammana object predominance. So it has a relationship to Ārammana, which was why we spoke about Ārammana Paccaya. And the second type is Sahajatādipati Paccaya, connaissance predominance. So what is Ārammanādipati? Ārammanādipati means the object is what takes predominance. The object is what is like a king, which rules over the chitta and cetasika dhamma. So if there is a particular object to which a great amount of weight or importance is attached, then that object has a potential of becoming an Ārammanādipati. So let me give you an example. Now let's say you're walking down the street and you see a pebble, just an ordinary pebble. And you will look at it, you will just not give great importance to it, and then you will walk away. And when you go home, will you still be thinking about that pebble? No. But on the other hand, if you saw a precious stone, maybe an emerald, somebody's emerald earring has fallen on the ground, and you see it, and you realize that this is a very expensive or something that is of great value, then you will pay more attention to it. You will give great weight to that emerald earring. So then you will see that object, making it an Ārammanādipati. So the object will be given more weight and it will be an Ārammanādipati Dhamma. So likewise, there are certain Dhammas then that can act as object predominance to the chitta and cetasika dhammas. So one such dhamma is Nibbana, and again the Magga phala that the enlightened individuals get, those are such dhammas that can act as Ārammanādipati. Now, what is Sahajatādipati? Sahajata, that word means rising together, basically rising together. So what is arising together? If you take a consciousness cannot arise alone. It arises together with the cetasika. So the cetasika are sahajata to the chitta. Not only that, in certain instances, you also get certain rupa arising together with the chitta and cetasika. Then those dhammas also will be sahajata. So if you take the patisandhi kammaja rupa, the patisandhi kammaja rupa are sahajata along with the patisandhi vipaka chitta cetasika. So the word sahajata means being born together. They're born at the same time. So now here, when it comes to this adipati, there are four dhammas that can act as sahajatādipati, and we'll talk about them next. So what you need to understand is adipati paccaya is twofold. Ārammanādipati, object predominance, where the object which is given great weight becomes the object predominance force. And the second group, Sahajatādipati, the connaissance predominance, there are four dhammas where one of those dhammas can become the predominant factor. Right, so I will skip this slide. Right, so what are the Sahajatādipati, the four Sahajatādipati? Chandādipati. Chanda is a mental factor, that is desire. So that is one form of predominance of desire, Chandādipati. Then we have predominance of energy, Viryādipati. Now, Viryādipati is not only an adipati, it also happens to be part of the eightfold noble truths. So it is Samma Vayama. Then we have Chittādipati, predominance of consciousness. And finally, we have predominance of investigation, Vimamsadipati. And Vimamsadipati happens to be Panya. So where do we find Panya? We find Panya again in the Eightfold Noble Truths. So it is Samma Ditti. So remember, the Viryadipati and Vimamsadipati, these two are not only Adipati, they are also Magganga. They are part of the Eightfold Noble Truths. So they are path factors. So this is the point that we are going to use when we are going to discuss Maggādhipatino Dhammā. Now let's look at the summary section, the Nikkepakhandam description of Maggādhipatino Dhammā. Katame Dhamma Maggādhipatino, which are the states having the path as their predominant factor. Ariya Maggam Adhipatin Karitva Ye Uppajjanti Chitta Cetasika Dhamma. Those consciousness and their mental factors, which in arising make the noble path their predominant factor. So in other words, what is Maggādhipatino Dhamma? It means that you have the noble path as the object, and certain Dhammas take the noble path as the predominant factor. So here what we are talking about is the object predominance. So object predominance is Ārammana-adhipati. So we have the noble path, and certain Dhammas take the noble path as their object, but not only as their object, they take it as their object predominance, Ārammana-adhipati. Ime Dhamma Maggādhipatino. These are the states having the path as their predominant factor. Now that is one part. So there we are talking about Ārammana-adhipati. Now don't worry, we are going to discuss this further. Okay, so then the next part. Ariya Magga Samangissa Vimamsadipateyam Maggang Bhavayantassa Vimamsaṅ Tapetva. Excluding the investigation or excluding the panya carried on by one who is conversant with the path and who is cultivating a way wherein investigation is the dominant factor. Now, what does that mean? Here we are talking about Sahajātādipati. Now, in the previous slide, we spoke about 4 different Sahajātādipati: Chanda, Chitta, Virya, and Vimamsa. So here we are talking about Vimamsadipati, that is investigation. So here, when Vimamsa or investigation or Panya becomes the leader, becomes the dominant factor, now he is the king. His subjects, the other Dhammas that arise together with Vimamsa, become the Maggādhipatino Dhamma, because those are the Sahajāta Dhamma that arise with that Vimamsa. But we can't take Vimamsa itself, because Vimamsa is the one who is dominating. He is not going to dominate over his own self. That is why we are taking Vimamsa out of the equation here. So that's why we said excluding the investigation, excluding Vimamsa. So what are these Dhamma? Tam sampayutto vedanakkhando, sanyakkhando, sankarakkkhando, viññānakkkhando. The 4 aggregates: feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness associated therewith. Associated with what? The investigation, the Vimamsa. Ime Dhamma Maggādhipatino. These are the states having the path as their predominant factor. So by the second half, we spoke about Sahajātādipati, whereas the first half, we spoke about Ārammana-adhipati. So this is from the Atthasālinī, the commentary to the Dhammasaṅgaṇī. What is Maggadhipatino? Maggadhipatino means having the dominance of the path by reason of overwhelming or the dominated. What is dominated by the path is what is meant by this term. So what is classified as Maggadhipatino in relation to the object predominance or the Arammana. So here the path is taken as the object by the four Jnana Sampayutta Kusala Chitta and the four Jnana Sampayutta Kriya Chitta. So these are Kamavachara or limited or Paritta Dhamma. Now, when do these arise? When an Aryan reflects on the path that they have obtained, then they would take the Magga or the path as Arammana. So that is the instance where this the path becomes a Maggādhipatino Dhamma as an object. So when it comes to the three sacca individuals, so who are sacca individuals? Sacca are the trainees. So they are still training on the path, and these are the stream enterer, the once returner and the non-returner, Sotapanna, Sakadagami and Anagami individuals. So for them, the chitta that arises as their pacchavekkhana chitta would be a maha kriya chitta, a maha jnana sampayutta kriya chitta. Sorry, maha jnana sampayutta kusala chitta, a wholesome consciousness. Whereas when it comes to the aseka puggala, the arahant, they will get the maha jnana sampayutta kriya chitta when they are reviewing or when they are having the pacchavekkhana process going on. So here the object predominance is in relation to this pacchavekkhana. Now the commentary goes on to say that it has to be the path that that particular individual has attained. So an Aryan disciple will reflect or will have a pacchavekkhana on their own path, giving importance to it. They won't give importance, the same amount of weight or the same amount of importance to somebody else's path. So for instance, if these Aryan Puggala has Chetopariya where they can look at another individual's consciousness, they won't give as much importance as if it is their own. So that is what is meant here by the second line. It is when they reflect on their own path that it becomes an object predominance. So then the Atthasālinī goes on to say, then does he not attach importance to the path of the Tathagata after seeing him do the Yama Maha Pelahara, the twin miracle? So then what they say is he does pay importance, but not as if it were his own path. So even though they do give great respect, they give great importance to that kind of thing, the Yama Pelahara, but still it is not their own. So it wouldn't be to the same degree. And then in the next line, they say the saint attaches importance to no state except path, fruition, and nibbana. So who is a saint? A saint is an arahant, and arahants will give importance only to path, fruition, and nibbana, and that again to their own path, fruition, and the nibbana that they have experienced. So here we spoke about Arammana and the instance where Arammana occurs. So it is always in relation to one's own path that these Chitta Chetasika will arise, giving importance to the path. That means Maggādhipatino Dhamma will be in relation to one's own path. Yes, so again, what is mentioned here is the same thing. So the dhammas that we spoke about here have the path as their predominance factor through the object predominance. So the path becomes the āyatana or object predominance to these dhammas. So these chitta cetasika dhamma gives a great amount of weight or importance to the sense object, which in this case is the magga or the path. And when does it occur? It occurs during the process of recollection or paṭiccasamuppāda. Okay, so if I go back to the slide where we spoke about the Nikkepa Khandha, it is these first 3 lines which talks about the āyatana, the object predominance. So what are these dhammas that become āyatana? When it comes to the sacca puggala, the Sotapatti, Sakadagami, and Anagami individuals, whenever they reflect on their respective maggas, that means if a Sotapatti individual recollects or paccavekkhana on their own Sotapatti Magga Chitta, or a Sakadagami individual recollects on their Sakadagami Magga, or an Anagami individual recollects on their Anagami Magga Chitta, they do it by giving the object great respect or great importance through this āyatana paccaya. And the Chitta Cetasika Dhamma that are involved here are one of the 4 Maha Kusala Jnana Sampayutta Chitta, together with 33 Cetasika, excluding Virati and Appamanya. I think there is a mistake here with the Cetasika. I need to check on this, whether it's 33 or 36. So I will get back to you on that. And next, the Arahant. The Arahant will reflect on the Arahatta Magga, that is the Arahant path, taking the object, which is the path, with great respect by means of the āyatana. So they do this paccavekkhana or the recollection on this path, giving great respect to it, and it will be on his own Arahatta Magga. So here in this instance, it will be one of the 4 Maha Kriya Jnana Sampayutta Chitta together with the concomitant Cetasika. So I will let you know exactly whether it's 33 or 36 after checking it. Yes, so the 33th Cetasika is correct. It slipped my mind. Okay, so now what we need to think of, what is the āyatana here? The āyatana is the path. So if the path is the āyatana, the Cetasika can't include Appamanya, because Appamanya occur only in relation to Panyati, concepts. So here, the Magga is not a concept. It's an ultimate reality. So Appamanya anyway are excluded. Then the next, Virati. Why are Virati excluded here? Virati are excluded because we are not abstaining from any bodily or verbal actions here. So the Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva cannot arise when the Kusala Chitta or the Kriya Chitta are focusing on the Magga, on the path. And that is why it is 33 and not 36 or 38. So because the object for the Maha Kusala Jnana Sampayutta Chitta are the Magga, that is why the number of Cetasika comes down to 33. Now we come to the Sahajātādipati. So we mentioned that there are 4 factors involved in Sahajātādipati. These are Chanda, Chitta, Virya, and Vimansa. So now let's look at the Atthasālinī description. So here the Nikkepa Khandha mentioned with investigation or Vimansa as the dominant influence. So here they are talking about the Sahajatadipati. So Vimamsa refers to Panya, or as a Magganga, it is Samma Ditti. So when Samma Ditti becomes the dominant influence, the coexisting Chitta Chetasika Dhamma are the ones that take that Sammaditthi or the Vimamsa as their dominating force. So they are the Sahajatadipati Dhamma. Now, why don't we take Chandadipati or Chittadipati? Chanda or desire is an Adipati Dhamma, but is it a path factor? No. Chanda is a mental factor. It occurs together with the Magga Chitta, but it is not a path factor. And what is Chitta? Chittadipati. Chitta refers to the consciousness. So the consciousness, in other words, the Magga Chitta. So the Magga Chitta again is not a path. So we can't take Chandadipati or Chittadipati here because they are not part of the path. But if you take Vimamsadipati, Vimamsa means Panya, it's also a path factor, Sammaditthi. And the same with energy, Viryadipati, because Virya happens to be Samma Vayama. It is also a path factor. So the Sahajatadipati applies to both Vimamsa and Virya. So in summary, if one who is cultivating the path makes chanda or desire the Adipati Dhamma, desire will be called Sahajatadipati, but it will not be called Maggadhipatino because chanda is not part of the path. So it will be a Sahajatadipati, but not a Maggadhipati. Then it's the same with chitta. If that particular individual makes the consciousness, chitta, as the dominant force, then it will be a Sahajatadipati. But it will not be a Maggadhipati because again, chitta is not part of the path. So when will it be both a Sahajatadipati as well as a Maggadhipati? It is when Vimamsa or Virya becomes the Adipati Dhamma, because Vimamsa is Panya and Panya is Sammaditthi. Virya is Samma Vayama. So both of these are path factors. So if a certain individual makes either Vimamsa or Virya its Adipati Dhamma, then it will both be called a Sahajatadipati as well as a Maggadhipati. So again, in summary, the states which have the Magga or path as predominance, Adipati, through the Sahajatadipati, connaissance predominance condition, in one who develops the path energy, that is Samma Vayama, and in one who develops the path wisdom, Samma Ditti, foremost. So now this is a table that gives the two conditioning states, the Paccaya Dhamma. One is Virya and the other is Vimamsa. So both Virya and Vimamsa happen to be Sahajatadipati as well as Maggadhipati Dhammas. And the Paccayuppanna Dhamma, those are the states that take the Virya or the Vimamsa as their predominant factor. These Dhammas are the Maggadhipatino Dhamma. So when Virya becomes the predominant factor, the 4 Magga Chitta and the 35 Chetasika, excluding Virya and the Appamanya, become the Maggadhipatino Dhamma. When Vimamsa becomes the Sahajatadipati, the 4 Magga Chitta and the 35 Chetasika, excluding Panya and Appamanya, become the Maggadhipatino Dhamma. So the summary table for Maggadhipatino Dhamma, and here we are talking about the Āyatana Pachaya, the first half of the Nikkepa Khandam description. So here what we get as the sense object, we get the respective parts and the analytical states. When it comes to the Seka Puggala, the three trainees, that is the Sotapatti, Sakadagami, and Anagami individuals, it will be the four Maha Kusala Jnana Sampayutta Chitta together with the 33 Chetasika. And when it comes to the Arahant, it will be the four Maha Kriya Jnana Sampayutta Chitta together with 33 Chetasika. And when do these Chitta arise? They arise when these individuals reflect on their respective paths, giving great amount of importance to the path. So, and it will be through the object predominance or the Āyatana Pachaya. And now let's look at the Atthasālinī Khandam, the commentary chapter description. Khatame Dhamma Maggārammaṇā, which are the states having the path as their object. Kāmāvachara kusalato chattaro jnana sampayutta chittuppāda. So this is what we were talking about. The four sense sphere, wholesome risings of consciousness associated with knowledge. Kiriyato chattaro jnana sampayutta chittuppāda. The four functional risings of consciousness associated with knowledge. Ime dhamma siya Maggārammaṇā na Maggahetukā. Siya Maggadhipatino siya navatabba Maggārammaṇā tipi Maggādhipatino tipi. Now what does this mean? Now let's look at this Dhamma. Here we have 8 chitta. We have 4 Kāmāvachara, Jnana Sampayutta Kusala Chitta, and 4 Kāmāvachara Jnana Sampayutta Kriya Chitta. Now, as we mentioned before in the previous slide, they are Maggādhipatino Dhamma. They take the path giving great importance to it. So they are Maggādhipatino. So if they take the path as an object, then they are also Maggārammaṇā Dhamma. So we can understand the first word here. Siya Maggārammaṇā means they can have the path as their object. So there's no debate about that. Na Maggahetukā. Now what does that mean? It doesn't take the Magga, or it doesn't have the Magga as its root cause. So when do you get the Magga as a root cause? It is in only when we speak about the 4 paths or the 4 Magga Chitta and their concomitant mental factors. So here the Kāmāvachara Kusala and the Kāmāvachara Kriya, they don't have the eightfold path. So here they are not Maggahetukā. They don't have the path as a root cause. Then again, it goes on to say, Siya navatabba Maggārammaṇā tipi Maggādhipatino tipi. That means they can also not be stated as having the path as their object, nor as having the path as their predominant factor. So what does that mean? It means that at certain times, they are not Maggārammaṇā Dhamma and they are not Maggādhipatino Dhamma. So it's not difficult to understand. Now let's take an example. If you are giving a dana, at that moment, your object will be either the individual whom you are giving the dana to, or it may even be the object that you are offering. So when you are giving a dana, you're not focusing on the path. So that is one instance where the Āyatana is not a Magga. So there it is not a Maggārammaṇā Dhamma, and at the same time it is not a Maggādhipatino Dhamma. Then let's say an Arahant, out of compassion, is giving some food to a hungry animal. So there, that arahant in his heart, he has compassion at that moment towards that hungry animal. So then again, the object is a panyati, is that hungry animal. So there, the object will not be the path. So then again, it will not be a Maggārammaṇā Dhamma, nor would it be a Maggadhipatino Dhamma. So this slide tells us about these 8 chitta, when they arise as well as when they do not arise. So we need to analyze it and think about it in terms of these different examples. Okay, so again, this is, we have discussed this part, so I'm going to skip this slide. Right. So next, we come to the next part in the Atthakatha Khandam, the commentary chapter. Chattaro Ariya Magga, the 4 noble paths, na Maggārammaṇā. Why are they na Maggārammaṇā? So the Chattaro Ariya Magga, the 4 noble paths, always take Nibbana as its object. So for that reason, it will not take the path as its object. So it is na Maggārammaṇā. However, it is Maggadhipatino. Why is that? Now here it is Maggadhipatino not by means of object predominance. It is not Arammanadipati here. It is Sahajatadipati. Because within the eightfold path or among the path factors we have Vimansa as well as Virya. So if one of those two become the Adipati Dhamma, then it will be a Maggadhipatino Dhamma. And again, it is also Maggahetukā, because if you remember, there were 3 definitions for Maggahetukā. One where the entire eightfold path was taken as the Maggahetu. Then again, Sammaditthi was taken in one definition as the Maggahetu. And in another, all 3, Alobha, Adosa, Amoha, those were taken as Maggahetu. So the Maggahetu, Dhammas that contain these Maggahetu are Maggahetukā. So the Chattaro, the 4 noble paths, become Maggahetukā according to those 3 definitions. Then again, it goes on to say, Siya Navatabba Maggadhipatino. That means they cannot be stated as having the path as their predominant factor. So at times they may be Maggadhipatino, and again at times they may not be Maggadhipatino. Why is that? Now let's say, for instance, if the Adipati Dhamma happens to be Chanda, if it's a Chanda Adipati, then there is a Sahajata Adipati there, but that is not a Maggadhipati. It is not part of the path. Chanda is not part of the path. Similarly, if the Adipati Dhamma is Chitta, Chitta again is not part of the path. So it will not be a Maggadhipatino. So there are instances where the 4 noble paths will not be a Maggadhipatino Dhamma. Then it talks about Rūpāvachara Chatuttanjana Kusalatocha Kiryatocha. The fine material, 4th jhana, wholesome and functional. So what is meant here are the Abhiññā Chitta, the Abhiññā Kusala and the Abhiññā Kriya Chitta. So these are 4th jhana, Rūpāvachara jhanas, where an individual who has developed their jhanas to such an extent, they are able to either see somebody else's chitta through the Cheto Pariyajnana or their own past chittas through Pubbe Nivasanussati Jnana, or even be able to see the future through Anagataṅsa Jnana. So those chitta also can take the Magga as a Arammana. Kiriya Hetuka Mano Vijñāna Dhātu Upekkhā Sahagata. Now, what is that? The rootless functional mind consciousness element accompanied by equanimity. So, equanimity. So, it's a Upekkhā Sahagata Chitta. And it is rootless. It is a functional Chitta. So, it's a Kriya Chitta, Ahetuka Chitta, accompanied by equanimity. So what is that? It is the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta. So the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta is the starting point of all of these cognitive processes. All of this Chitta Viti starts with this Manodvara Vajjana. So that is why it is also taken here. So these Dhammas, the Rupavachara, fourth jhana, Kusala and Kriya, then the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta, they can be Maggārammaṇa. So they can take the path as their object. They are not Maggahetukā. They don't contain the Magga as their root cause. So that is obvious, right? They don't contain the eightfold path. And they are not Maggadhipatino. So they don't take the Magga as a Adhipati Dhamma. So now one may think, okay, doesn't the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta take the Magga as Adhipati? It takes the Magga as an object, but not as an Adhipati, because they are very weak Chittas. They are unable to take the Magga as an Adhipati or as a predominant factor. Then again, it goes on to say, Siya Navatabba Maggārammaṇa Tika. Then again, at times they are not Maggārammaṇa. So what does it mean? So as I mentioned before, Manodvara Vajjana is the starting point of all of these Manodvarika Chitta Viti. So whenever the Manodvara Vajjana takes any other object as its sense object, anything apart from the Magga, then it will not be a Maggārammaṇa Dhamma. So, for example, when you're thinking about a certain individual, so let's say you see a beggar and you develop compassion. So there, that's the starting point is, the object is that beggar, and it's a panyati, it's an individual. So there the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta will not be taking the Magga as its object. So it will not be a Maggārammaṇa Dhamma. The four Aryan paths are conditioned by the path owing to the existence of the condition associated with the path and called the path. And they are dominantly influenced by the path, and that is through the Sahajātādipati, Samma Vāyama and Samma Ditti. So we described this before. So basically the four Aryan paths, they don't take the path as their object. The Aryan paths always take Nibbana as its object, but they are Maggahetukā Dhamma as well as Maggadhipatino Dhamma. So this is just a reminder again, out of the four Sahajātādipati, Chanda and Chitta are taken out here. That's because they are not path factors. So we are left with only Viryādipati, which is Samma Vāyama, and Vimamsadipati, Samma Ditti. And these are the Dhammas that are involved in Maggadhipatino Dhamma. And then we spoke about the Manodvara Vajjana. And here they can take the path as its object, but they will never take it as a predominant factor. So it will not be a Maggadhipatino Dhamma. However, it will be a Maggārammaṇa Dhamma. And at the same time, the Manodvara Vajjana will not be a Maggahetukā Dhamma. So it's very simple. Manudvara Vajjana Chitta is a ahetuka chitta. Therefore, there are no hetu. There are no roots involved. So it cannot be a Maggahetukā. It's not associated with the path, nor is it associated with any roots. So therefore, it will not fall under that term as well. So it will only be a Maggārammaṇa Dhamma. So there's a little example given here. So here they say, now if there is a certain king, the whole world will have regard for the king. But the people who are not clever, who doesn't have much knowledge, may not have such high regard for the king. The foolish people may not have such high regard. Similarly, this Manodvara Vajjana Chitta is considered as a very base or very foolish sort of chitta because it's a rootless chitta. And therefore, it will not have high regard for the path. Now there is more under the Atthakatha Khandha. Kāmāvachara kusalato chattaro jnana vippayutta chittupada. The four sense sphere wholesome risings of consciousness dissociated from knowledge. So here the wording is wrong. It should be dissociated from knowledge. The jnana vippayutta chitta. Sabbang akusalang, all unwholesome states. Sabbo kāmāvacharassa vipāko kiryato cha chittupada. Sabbo kāmāvacharassa vipāko, all sense sphere resultants. Kiryato cha. Here the word cha, cha means six. If it was ca, cha, it would mean and. But here it means six kriya. So what are these six kriya? We have the four jnana vippayutta mahakriya, and we have two remaining kriya which we didn't talk about, the panchadvara vajjana as well as the hasitupada. So these six kriya. Yes, so what happens to these? These are chittas that do not take the magga as its object. Now it's very obvious. When it comes to the jnana vippayutta chitta, because these chitta do not possess any knowledge, any jnana, any panya, they are not able to take the magga as its object. And again, because they do not contain any path factors, they will not be Maggahetukā. And if they do not take the path as its object, it will not be a Maggādhipatino dhammā as well. And similarly, the akusal also will not take the magga as its sense object. And finally, all of the kāmāvachara vipāka, the six kriya that we mentioned, these also, the six kriya again, are without knowledge, without panya. So they will not take the magga as its object, and nor do they have the magga as a root cause, root condition. So these dhammas will not be a part of this triplet. They are tika muttaka dhamma. And there's more. Rūpāvachara tika chatukka jhana kusalatocha vipākatocha kiryatocha. Now earlier we spoke about the Rūpāvachara fourth jhana. But now here we are talking about the remaining Rūpāvachara jhana. So what are these three or four jhanas? So now here we are talking about two jhana systems, the four jhana system and the five jhana system. So according to the four jhana system, the fourth jhana is the jhana, the abhiññā jhana that we were talking about. So the first three of the four jhana system and the first four of the five jhana system are what is meant by the first line, Rūpāvachara tika chatukka jhana. Chatutthassa jhanassa vipāko, the resultants of the fourth jhana. Now here we are talking about the resultants of the fourth jhana according to the four jhana system, or the fifth jhana according to the five jhana system. Chattaro aruppa kusalatocha vipakatocha kiriyatocha. The four wholesome resultants and functionals of the immaterial sphere. Basically, all of the arupavachara, kusala, vipaka and kriya jhanas. Chattari cha samanya phalani. The four fruits of the life of a recluse. So these are the phala chitta. Ime dhamma Navatabba Maggārammaṇā Tipi, Maggahetukā Tipi, Maggadhipatino Tipi. All of these dhammas, that means these dhammas that we mentioned on this slide, as well as the dhammas that I mentioned on the previous slide, these are not part of this Maggārammaṇa Tika. They cannot be classified as Maggārammaṇā Dhamma, Maggahetukā Dhamma, or Maggādhipatino Dhamma. So they are left outside this tika. Rupancha, Nibbānancha, Anārammana. All Rupa and Nibbāna, they do not take any object. They are Anārammana. So that is why they are mentioned separately. Rupa and Nibbāna do not take it. They have no object. Therefore, they are left outside. So what takes objects? Only chitta chetasika dhamma. Everything else are anārammana. They don't take any objects. Now the nine jhanas here, now here what they're talking about, the Rupavachara nine jhanas, beginning with the everywhere vantage point. That is the eight kasinas, the eight kasina as well as the akasa. Those nine jhanas, they do not take the path as their object. And neither do they have the path as its condition, nor as its dominant influence. So they are not considered here. However, what is highlighted here? Knowledge of the thoughts of others, that is Cheto Pariyajnana. Of one's former lives, Pubbe Nivasa Nussati Jnana. Of the future, that is Anagatansa Jnana. These three that belong to the fourth jhana, these are abhinya. They have the path as the object, so they are Maggārammaṇa. But they do not become a Maggadhipatino. Why? Now, for example, if you take the Chetopariya, it is not their own path that they are focusing on. So then they won't give high regard to it. So, and again they say, these knowledges, it is not that they don't have regard, it is because these knowledges themselves are Mahaggata Dhamma, they are sublime. So now there's a nice example given here. When the whole world has great regard for the king, does his parents also have as much regard? No, for them, he is still their young child. So no matter how old he is, no matter whether he is the king or not, to them he is the same as when he was young. So they won't bow down to him. They won't raise their hands in homage. To them, to the parents, the king is still their own son. So likewise, these sublime or these Mahaggata Chitta don't regard these the path in the same way as the Paritta Chitta do. So for that reason, they have said that these three kinds of knowledge, because they themselves are Mahaggata, they are sublime, they don't have regard for the path. So they are not Maggadhipatino Dhamma. Right, so this is a small summary table. So we have the four Jnana Sampayutta Mahakusala and the four Jnana Sampayutta Mahakriya. these are sometimes Maggārammaṇa Dhamma and sometimes they are not Maggārammaṇa Dhamma. They never are Maggahetukā because they don't have the path factors as a root condition. And sometimes they are Maggadhipatino, that is during the recollection process, during Paccavekkhana. And again, sometimes they are not Maggadhipatino. And then we have the Manodvara Vajjana and the two Abhiññā, Kusala and Kriya Chittas. These Dhammas are sometimes Maggārammaṇa and sometimes they are not Maggārammaṇa. They are never Maggahetukā and they are never Maggadhipatino Dhamma. So this is the summary regarding these chittas. And together with them we have 38 Cetasika arising together with them. Now we will talk about the remaining things. The 12 akusala chitta, the 4 jnana vippayutta maha kusala, the 23 kāmāvachara vipāka, that's all kāmāvachara vipāka, the 6 kāmāvachara kriya, that is panchadvara vajjana, hasituppāda, and the 4 jnana vippayutta kriya. So why we are talking about them separately? Because the manodvara vajjana as well as the 4 jnana sampayutta kriya were spoken about before. So here we are taking the balance kāmāvachara kriya. Then the 15 Rupavachara Chitta, Kusala Vipaka and Kriya, except the 2 Abhiññā, Kusala and Kriya, all of the Arupavachara Chitta and all of the Lokuttara Phala Chitta and the 52 Cetasika that arise with them. Now all of these Dhammas are never Maggārammaṇa or Maggahetukā or Maggadhipatino. That means they do not belong to this Tika at all. They are always Tika Muttaka. They are always excluded from this Tika. Now the previous slide, the Dhammas on the previous slide, if I go back, they are part of certain terms, and again they may not be part of those terms as well, but they are not Tika Muttaka. They are there but not completely. However, these Dhammas mentioned on this slide are always Tika Muttaka. Then finally we spoke about the 28 Rupa Nibbana. These Dhammas do not take an object. They have no object. Therefore, they are always Tika Muttaka. So with that, we come to the end of the Maggārammaṇa Tika. I would like to leave you with an exercise, and it's the same exercise, that is to categorize the analytical states of this Tika according to khandha, āyatana, dhātu, and Ariya sacca. Do we have time for questions? Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. But I think there is a question in the chat, which is in Chinese.
Yes, Doctor, the question is to ask teacher, under what situation the mind can take the present object, and under what situation the mind will take the future, the present chitta. Under what situation the mind can take present chitta as object, and what situation can the mind take future chitta as object?
Under what condition the mind can take the present chitta and the future chitta as its object?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So when it comes to the present chitta, say for example, you are doing a chittanupassana. So at that time, you are focusing on the present chitta. So that is one instance where you're observing the present chitta. When it comes to the future, anagatansa jnanas, those are abhiññā. So it's a special power, it's a special knowledge where an individual has the ability to see what is to come in future. So such individuals who have developed that kind of wisdom is able to see the future. So they may be able to identify, say for example, they may be able to say, okay, in future there will be this individual may become the Buddha, or this individual will become an Arahant or a Sotapatti individual. Like that, they may be able to predict the future. So that would be the instance where they will be seeing in the future. But when it comes to the present chitta, chittanupassana would be an instance where you will be observing the present chitta and cetasika dhamma. Okay, we have another question, Acharyaṇī Theruvan Saranai. When it says taking Magga as the object, what are the ultimate truths for this object? Is it the chitta, the Magganga, or the Magga chitta and all the Sampayutta cetasika? Okay, so here under Maggārammaṇa Dhamma, we mentioned that taking the path as the object or taking the Magga as the object refers to the Magga chitta and not the remaining mental factors. So here we will have to take it as the chitta. Yeah, and it applies to Maggadhipatino as well under Maggārammaṇa Tika, where the individual recollects on the Magga during the Paccavekkhana process. So again, it is the Magga chitta. Okay, so if you have any more questions, please feel free to email them to this email address, and we'll try and answer them before the next lesson, maybe by uploading another video. Yeah, so there's going to be a bit of a long break. I'll be going on a meditation retreat for the next couple of days. So the next lesson will be on the 13th of July. And now it is time to share merits. I would like all of you to join me.
那现在呢，老师请大家呢也跟着老师一起呢，我们在做这个功德的回向。
Ākāsattā ca bhummattā devā nāgā mahitika puññaṇṭhaṃ anumoditvā chiran rakkantu sāsanaṃ chiran rakkantu desanaṃ chiran rakkantu mam paraṃ idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamu satan samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Idam me punyang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Idam me punyang nibbanassa paccayo hotu. Mama punya bhagang sabba sattanam bhajemi. Te sabbe me samang punya bhagang labantu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
You, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sukhi
sadhu.
hotu.
Anumodana, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much.